Welcome back to Life in Review. I'm Josefa Salinas, your host. One of the most fascinating books I have read in a very long time. The book is called Kilo, Inside the Deadliest Cocaine Cartels from the Jungles to the Streets. Oh my gosh. Toby Muse is the author, and he's with us this morning. Toby, what a book. Man, I tell you, it was a page turner, and I just couldn't put it down. I kept just turning page after page after page after page. It was absolutely fascinating. So I got to ask right off, I'm sure everybody says this, why this subject? When so many books and movies and things have been done about it, why did you decide to write about this subject?
Well, first of all, thank you for the kind words on the book. I really did try to kind of inject a kind of element of really make it a page turner. I kind of, as you say, there's been so many books written about this subject and so many movies. I kind of wanted to really get the urgency of this business, that this is a business. The cocaine trade thrives on excitement, on danger. Sometimes it can be incredibly sexy, but incredibly grimy and dirty. And I kind of wanted to show all of those faces. Why I did this? Because I wanted to show what the narcos of 2020 looked like. I think everybody really has an idea now of Pablo Escobar, of the Cali cartel. If you're interested in this subject, you've read or seen a TV series about it. But I wanted to show how the business looks today. And the business is much bigger than ever. The time of Pablo Escobar, in terms of cocaine, it's child's play compared to what we're dealing with today. There's more cocaine on the planet than ever before. Just to give you an example, last year in one operation, the United States seized 20 tons of cocaine. That was near Philadelphia. So I wanted to show how did we get to this moment where there's more cocaine, and how have the cartels adapted to the new world.
Now, in this book, you're saying it's like a journey from the jungles to the street. So it kind of follows what happens from the very point of where the cocaine is grown to where it, where someone decides to pick it, the lives of the people who pick it for a living. And then, that's their job. And do they really look at it as, picking something that's going to end up being a drug in another country?
They're certainly aware that it will be turned into cocaine. They're aware that it will be used by people. But it's also, for them, quite abstract, because when you go to Colombia's countryside, you see never any drug use. It just doesn't happen, not even smoking marijuana, just nothing. They pride themselves on being what they would call quite healthy. For them, it's beer, rum, or whiskey, but never drugs. So for them, I don't think they ever actually see the effects of what the drugs do. They're just at the bottom of this chain. They know there's a lot of money being made somewhere. They're not seeing it. Time and time again, these coca farmers would tell me, we plant this just to get by. And I did the back of an envelope sums with one farmer. We figured out that he was earning around $200 for every harvest for basically making 1 kilo of coca paste, which is one stop short of pure cocaine. He was making 2 tons, and that's over $200 profit over 2.5 months. This is just these farmers getting by. The reason they grow coca, though, is that it's the only one that they know they can sell. They never have trouble. If they grow pineapples, they may end up selling the pineapples below cost. Coca is always a buyer ready.
And $200 is nothing compared to what that kilo is going to end up being.
Indeed. The figures of this business are just astronomical, but it also explains so much. It explains the treachery. It explains why murder is so prevalent when we're dealing with these figures. Let's just look at 1 kilo of cocaine in Colombia. That's roughly $1,500, $1,600. I think the most expensive gram on the planet is in New Zealand, and it's roughly $240 per gram. Times that into a kilogram, that's $240,000 per kilo. So just there's fortunes to be made because of this black market. And that's why there's so many people ready to risk their lives and to risk it all in order to get into the drug trafficking business.
So let's talk about how you went about researching this book. I don't imagine that the cartels were too interested, like, oh yeah, come on over here. Let's let you see exactly how we bring it from the fields to your table.
Indeed. I lived in Colombia I arrived to Colombia in the year 2000 and lived there until the year 2017. And so a lot of this research took years to take place, and it was just a question of building up these contacts. Now, in the countryside, people are surprisingly open. They want to show you these things because they really believe that they've been abandoned by the central government. There's many parts of the country you go there and the farmers live without decent roads, without bridges. So it's impossible for them to grow legal crops. If there's no roads and no bridge, how are you going to get a ton of pineapples to a market? But, if you just produce 1 kilo of cocoa paste, you just put that in your back pocket, jump on a motorbike, and you can sell it. So they were very open. They were showing us, look, this is how we live. When you got into the cartel system, this was the result of years of contacts. But again, I find as a journalist, many people have this urge to open up at some point. It's to explain their lives, to explain their decisions. That's a very common human impulse. And so people were surprisingly open, given that, I couldn't talk about specific cases. No one sat down with an interview for me, imagining that they would end up in a jail cell. And, I had to respect that thing. So we wouldn't talk about identifying features or how exactly they operated, but they were happy to show me the broad outlines of how they lived and worked.
In this industry of the production of cocaine from the fields to America's neighborhoods, how many women are involved in this process, or is it a predominantly male industry?
It's absolutely a predominantly male industry. So the Colombia's countryside, there's quite a lot of machismo in Colombia's countryside, but which is ironic because, I hate to generalize, but women really keep the countryside moving. They keep it operating. If you go out to the countryside, if you want to get something done, you really want to talk to a woman community leader. I don't know really why it is, but, many of these farmers there's a whole story about how these cocoa farmers will go into town, they'll sell their cocoa paste, and they'll just spend a large chunk of that money on prostitutes, on alcohol for the whole weekend, then come back with only a little money left. So women really get it done, but they are not central to the business, in fact, and their cartels is even more machismo. I know that there are arising in some parts of the world, these female traffickers. It's extraordinarily rare in Colombia for a woman to achieve a large, high-ranking place in the cartel system. Now, what they are, though, is that there is a lot of competition between these women, these models who want to be with the drug traffickers, and they become their lovers, their wives, and then they can actually exert quite a lot of control. I met one woman who receives about $50,000 in just maintenance, she calls it, from her drug trafficker lover a month. She's been given something like 6-7 cars. I think she's 25. But it's this life of continual plastic surgery, constantly in the gym because she's worried about losing her spot to someone else. She wants to keep this drug trafficker because they're such a source of money for them.
Now, when you are looking and investigating some of these actual cartel leaders, we've seen a ton of movies. There's all kinds of stories, and I think Scarface probably glamorized the drug trade to a point where people actually thought it was something to pursue. Is there that kind of a feeling in real life?
Absolutely. I mean, Colombia is an extremely stratified country. It's very, very classist. And, I hate to say it, but there are some parts of that country where if you are born poor, you will die poor. It's just the idea of, this kid who's born into a slum becoming a president. At the moment, it's unthinkable. Hopefully that will change in the future. But right now, it's very stratified. So for many of these kids who are born into an underclass, into these most marginal slums of a city, in Latin America, often the slums have the most beautiful views of the city because they're up in the mountains, that they're called invasions. Basically, they're just shacks that have been made out of steel and sometimes they've been built by their owner. But so these kids look down on the city, and it can be it can produce this rage within them because it's this consumerist rage of they're being shown every day, looking down on the city, everything they can't have. So for many young men, this becomes the only way to get ahead, to be somebody in a society that has kind of decided to abandon them because they grew up in such a poor marginal. This is their way to stand out. Get a gun and you can become somebody. And, I hope Colombia can overcome this tragic cycle at some point.
Now, one of the things that I think we've all noticed is that a good portion of these drugs come to the United States. So is the problem with the drug traffickers and the growers, or is the problem with the fact that the United States consumes so much of those drugs?
The United States, as you say, is the largest market on the planet for cocaine. And while we can rightly ask Colombia why is it producing more cocaine than ever, Colombia absolutely has the right to ask the world back, why is the world not doing anything to curb its demand? This business runs on demand. And it's also the failures of this war on drugs. Let's go back to what we learned with Prohibition. Prohibition made Al Capone a monster, a millionaire. And now it's the same thing with the prohibition, with the war on drugs. It turns these monsters like Pablo Escobar or Otoniel, which is the biggest drug trafficker in South America at the moment, the leader of the Gulf Clan cartel. These monsters become multimillionaires, if not billionaires. That's the black market they thrive in. So we actually need to start reviewing our own policies, and especially in how we approach the cocaine industry. I think there needs to be a lot more focus on demand, on cutting demand in our own countries, but also working with the farmers in Colombia to give them a dignified life so they don't feel that they have no options except to grow coca.
Do you think that the government in Colombia would be open to some type of, collaboration and turning the farmers into something, where they can produce something else that would actually make them a living?
I mean, there used to be a program called the Voluntary Substitution Program, and this is where the government did work with the local farmers, and the farmers were given a stipend. They would abandon the coca and they would start a new productive project. But unfortunately, the government just kind of lost enthusiasm. And as they've been under record crops of coca, President Donald Trump has been very vocal in criticizing Colombia and demanding something be done. And he's saying you need to go back to something called aerial fumigation. These are these small planes that fly over the fields of coca and spray out herbicide. The problem is that, yes, it kills the crops, although often it doesn't because farmers have learned techniques to protect the crops. But let's just say it does kill the crops. Well, 3 weeks later, that farmer is still poor. He has no other option. What's he going to do? He's going to go back and replant the coca. And we've seen this time and time and time again. I was with a unit of the police in a very hostile territory, which is under the control of these narco militias. And we were with them as they were ripping out the coca. The policemen knew, even as they were ripping out the coca, under great personal risk because the narco militias sow landmines throughout these fields in order to slow the police and these down. They knew that as soon as they moved on, a month later, the farmer would just come back and plant some more coca. So I think it's crucial we develop this new plan and kind of rethink our approach to this. And just a final point, even the last Colombian president described it this way. He said, the war on drugs can feel like you're pedaling on an exercise bike. You spend half an hour pedaling. You're sweaty, and you look up and you realize you haven't moved an inch forward. And that's what the drug war can feel like. You're just never moving forward.
Quickly talk to me about the superstitions. Now, in a lot of the movies, it seems like the heads of the cartels and the people are very superstitious, carrying a rabbit's foot, doing all kinds of odd things to what they think protects their kilo as it comes into the United States.
This was part of the world, that world, the underworld. Really just fascinates me. All of these superstitions and these kind of rituals that they all have. Certainly the drug trafficker I interviewed had his own personal witch, and this witch would cast spells, and he gave me a wide array of spells that he can cast. He talks about that there are some spells he can cast which will drive people mad. There are other spells he casts in order to give the kilo of cocaine invisibility, and that's it's not exactly invisible, but what he means is he says that if it's sitting there in a warehouse, the police just won't look at it. That's the spell he's casting. It's also cast a spell to protect the drug trafficker. And the sicario, the killer for hire, I was actually with him when he went to the shrine, their so-called Virgin of the Assassins. This is where they go pray before an image of the Virgin Mary, and they pray for success in the upcoming missions to kill other people. They pray to keep themselves safe. So it's this kind of incorporation of religion, but also superstition into this very strange, weird, dark underworld. And I really wanted to show the rest of the world that.
Yeah, we definitely found it. The book is called Kilo. Toby Muse is the author. Toby, give us some social media where people can follow you.
On Twitter, I'm at Toby Muse, TOBYMUSE. And for more information on the book, please go to my website, which is www.tobymuse.com.
Well, I hope when people read this book, they realize that the problem comes from Colombia, but it ends up here because we're the ones that keep asking for it. And that's definitely something that you will find in this book. Toby, thank you so much for what you have done and continued success. And please know that you got a home right here. Come back and see us anytime you write another book.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Have an amazing day.
You too. Take care.
What a show we have had this morning. I'm Josefa Salinas. Until we get together again, stay strong, stay focused, most of all, stay informed. I'll catch you next time right here. Have an amazing week ahead. I know things are starting to open up, and as they do, we're all starting to venture out. When you venture out, use some common sense. Keep your masks around. When you're supposed to wear them, wear them. Keep the concept of social distancing in mind, and together, we'll make it through without another wave of COVID coming our way. Have a beautiful holiday tomorrow, and don't forget to celebrate those who stand the line every day to make sure we can all sleep at night here at home. Our men and women who serve in the military. I salute them.